Now, the rest of the story. It was a charming house on Tiger Tail Road. Not exactly an enchanted cottage, but a warm home where once upon a time something quite enchanting happened. Larry was a teenager with a crush on a schoolmate named Diane. And one day Larry got up the nerve to call Diane, ask her out for the movies Friday night. Diane said she'd love to go, but she could not. Not Friday. Friday she was singing at a local Elks Club dance. What about Saturday? No, said Larry, he was busy with his family Saturday. And he was feeling rather dejected. Until what Diane had said finally registered. You sing? Larry remarked. And Diane answered, yes, a little, for meetings and things. At any rate, Larry's solution to their dating dilemma was that he could meet Diane at the Elks Club. After she was through singing, they could go on from there to the movies. Diane asked her mom, and Mom said yes, and that would have been all there was to it, except Larry arrived at the Elks Club an hour early that Friday evening. He got there at 9 instead of 10, when Diane had said she would be finished. So Larry heard his little girlfriend sing with the band, and all at once something wonderful distracted him from Diane's sparkling blue eyes, her even more scintillating voice. It was all that he could talk about for weeks. Diane was such a great singer. How come she had not been discovered by a talent scout or something? At home, you remember the home on Tiger Tail Road? Larry started to get teased, especially by his sister Donna. Larry's current big thing is how Donna referred to Diane whenever Larry praised his girlfriend's talent, and that would usually invite an appeal to a higher court. You do believe me, don't you, Dad? And Dad would smile at his teenage son. Surely Diane must be a good singer if she was performing for different groups around town, Dad would say. You should hear her sing, Larry would always inject insistently, and Dad would always answer, oh, yes, yes, he would, he should, someday. I think Dad would have been more eager to oblige young Larry had he not been such a busy man. But as it was, Larry kept insisting, and Dad kept agreeing, until somehow he never managed to meet the young lady who had so impressed his son, until one day. Dad was home from work, sick in bed with a cold. He was propped up in bed reading when suddenly the bedroom door was flung open and walked Larry with Diane. Yes, she had been brought there by Larry to sing, and she sang. And if possible, Larry's dad was even more impressed than his son had been. And the rest is history. Did I mention that Diane never sang alone? No, she always sang with her 3 younger sisters, and she, Diane, was only 15. But it had all begun as a Friday night movie date in 1955, which led to the discovery of the Lennon Sisters by young Larry's bedridden dad, a band leader named Lawrence Welk. And now her music is outlasting his. And what do you know? She is still performing in Branson, Missouri. And now you know the rest of the story.
And now the rest of the story. The Lennon sisters that Larry introduced to his sick father, Lawrence Welk, were 16-year-old Diane, everyone called her Dee Dee, 14-year-old Peggy, 12-year-old Kathy, and 9-year-old Janet. But there were more than 4 Lennon sisters. The Lennon family was quite large. In 1939, William Herbert Bill Lennon married Isabel Emily Denning. Everyone called her Sis. Together, Bill and Sis had 12 children, 5 boys, 7 girls. The large Lennon family, the 2 parents, their 11 children, and 1 grandparent, lived in a small 2-bedroom home in Venice, California. 14 people in a 2-bedroom home. Bill worked as a milkman and then worked for a golf course. When he was younger, during the big band era, Bill had performed in a barbershop quartet with 3 of his brothers. When his children came along, he began passively teaching them to sing and harmonize with him and with each other. Now, when I say passively, I mean he sang to them regularly, just around the house. And they began to sing along. Then he began showing them how to harmonize and how to build onto the foundation. Bill later became their manager. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about Bill in just a moment. After that monumental meeting, Lawrence Welk had the Lennon Sisters perform on the very next airing of his variety television show. That was Christmas Eve, 1955. Here's a clip from that performance.
Thank you, my good friends. And on this holy night, I would like to have you good people meet some of my good neighbors, the Lennon Sisters. I've had the pleasure of hearing them sing out at my house, and I like them so much I decided to share this wonderful singing with you this evening. We have Diane, 16, Peggy, 14, and Kathy, 12, and Janet, 9. Ladies and gentlemen, the Lennon Sisters.
He can turn the tide and calm the angry sea. He alone decides, writes a symphony.
The Lennon Sisters became regulars on his show, but they were not paid the same salaries as other stars who appeared on the show. Oh no. From 1955 to 1967, the Lennon Sisters appeared regularly on Lawrence Welk's show almost every time it aired, but they were only paid union scale wages. In the entertainment industry, that's like minimum wage. They were paid the same amount per performance as the guy who played the triangle on the back row of Lawrence Welk's band. But hey, it was a start. In the following year, they recorded their first hit single, Tonight You Belong to Me, which reached number 15. In 1961, they recorded the song Sad Movies Make Me Cry, which went to number 1 on the charts, but not in America, in Japan. Their lone number 1 single of their career, their all-time highest charting recording, only reached number 56 in America. They recorded a treasure trove of songs, including their versions of well-known standards such as Among My Souvenirs, Twilight Time, Greensleeves, Ave Maria, and Moon River. During each Christmas season, my family listens to the Lennon Sisters' Christmas albums. Don't judge me, they're wonderful. Although they were only making union scale while on the Lawrence Welk show, the Lennon Sisters were making money in other ways. Their recordings brought in royalties. They also had a line of merchandise such as coloring books, storybooks, paper dolls, and many more items. In 1967, the Lennon Sisters and Lawrence Welk made a new agreement. Rather than performing on the Welk show pretty much every time he was on the air, the Lennon Sisters would only perform on the show once a month. This allowed them to pursue other opportunities which paid more money. They had families to feed by this point. When they performed on other shows, they were paid as stars and not that low union scale. Lawrence Welk was not happy with this agreement. In February of the next year, 1968, Lawrence Welk decided not to renew their contract, and the Lennon Sisters' time on the Lawrence Welk show ended. Once the Lennon Sisters were out from under the Lawrence Welk contract, ABC came calling. They created a variety show called Jimmy Durante Presents the Lennon Sisters. They began filming in early 1969. It was around this time that Bill Lennon retired from managing the Lennon Sisters. Bill gave private golf lessons at the Venice Golf Course in Marina del Rey. On August 12, 1969, Bill drove to the golf course and parked his car, just like he had previous days. As he was walking toward the building, a man jumped out from behind another car. They had a brief conversation. Suddenly, the man pulled a rifle from a gunny sack and the two men began scuffling over the weapon. Bill shouted, "No, no, don't do it! Help! Help!" Somehow, Bill broke away from the man and began running toward the entrance to the parking lot. It was surrounded by a fence. The man fired the gun and hit Bill in the back. Bill staggered and ran toward the corner of the fence. The man fired a second shot and hit him in the back again. Bill fell to the ground and began crawling around the fence. The man ran right up to Bill, put the gun to the side of his head by his ear, and fired again. 53-year-old William Bill Lennon was dead. The gunman ran across the street to another parking lot, threw the rifle in the trunk of a car, and sped away. Watson counsel, who witnessed the shooting, tried to follow him in another car, but lost him. Investigators immediately had a suspect named Marvin E. Major, but everyone knew him as Chet Young. He was a former officer in the Air Force, a first lieutenant. In 1965, Marvin had been a patient in a mental ward in Colorado. He had been arrested for sending obscene materials through the mail and making harassing telephone calls to the Lennon family. He had previously been arrested by the Secret Service after threatening to kill President Lyndon B. Johnson because, he claimed, the president had stopped him from marrying a member of the quartet, Peggy Lennon. The man had harassed the Lennon family for 7 years. Police were unable to track down the gunman. On or about October 5th, 1969, about 3.5 weeks after the killing, Marvin parked his car on an abandoned logging road 4 miles east of Long Barn, California, and took his own life. On October the 11th, 4 hunters came upon the car and called police. Investigators searched the car and found a rambling suicide note that Marvin had written in which he admitted to killing Bill Lennon and said he did it for the sake of the girls. Also inside the car, they found several newspaper clippings about Bill's murder and about the Lennon Sisters, along with a corrugated carton addressed to Peggy Lennon at the television studio in which they were filming. Investigators searched the car and found a rambling suicide note that Marvin had written in which he admitted to killing Bill Lennon and said he did it for the sake of the girls. Also inside the car, they found several newspaper clippings about Bill's murder and about the Lennon Sisters, along with a corrugated carton addressed to Peggy Lennon at the television studio in which they were filming. The Lennon Sisters struggled with the murder of their father. The variety show they had been filming for ABC, Jimmy Durante Presents the Lennon Sisters, lasted just a season and a half before it was canceled. From the 1970s onward, the Lennon Sisters performed across the country and were regulars on television variety shows and game shows. In 1982, Larry Welk asked the Lennon Sisters to perform at the Lawrence Welk Theater in Branson. They continued performing at that theater in Branson until 2012. The Lennon Sisters still perform on occasion, and the group is made up of various members of the family. And it all started, as Mr. Harvey explained, when little Larry brought a girl home to sing for his sick dad. When I began researching this story, I initially thought that Bill Lennon was the only victim in this story. But there were 2 victims. Marvin Edward Major was struggling with schizophrenia. According to the Mayo Clinic, schizophrenia is a serious mental health condition that affects how people think, feel, and behave. This condition usually includes a mixture of hallucinations, delusions, and disorganized thinking and behavior. To the person suffering from schizophrenia, these delusions and hallucinations are absolutely real. That's what they seem to them. But doctors know much more about schizophrenia now than they did in the 60s. Despite what we now know, many people with schizophrenia don't know they have a mental health condition and don't believe they need treatment. Now, treatment is normally required for the rest of their lives. If someone suffering from schizophrenia stops taking their medication, they're no longer in total control of their own minds. It's up to us to see that they get the help they need. If someone you know and care about shows symptoms of schizophrenia, try to get them help. I'll leave a link to the Mayo Clinic's page on schizophrenia in the description below. Now, if they are in danger or are putting others in danger, call 911. They usually can't help themselves. We need to help them. I'm Brad Dyson. Thanks for watching. And now you know the rest of the story.